Well, hello, friends, and welcome back. This time to get to know my very close colleague and friend Tom Schnitzius, better known as Tomei. That's how I refer to him all the time now. We've had a relationship for about a decade, actually a little more than that. Done a tremendous amount of deep inner work together, and I'm just delighted that he has chosen to be part of our Spirit Partners initiative. He has an enormous amount of value to share with you. And I'm going to treat this as quite an informal interviewer and say, Tomei, uh, tell us what brought you to this endeavor and to the work that you do, because I know that our listeners are going to want to find out a lot about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bill. And I'm really excited to be here to share whatever it is that I might have from my heart with other people that are out there that are looking to find themselves in whatever way that might be. Um, our relationship has covered probably now, I'm guessing like 15 years or so, maybe more. I met you a couple of years after I was in Summit County and to your spiritual group that you were having I think it was Tuesday night, maybe it was Thursday night. Um, and as I started experiencing the spirit groups that you had there, I found that to be connected to them was going to be a wonderful thing for me to be able to open up to others who kind of have that same journey in mind and finding themselves in some way of finding some balance and some heartfelt emotions and to clear themselves of whatever is in their journey that's holding them back. Um, my journey started quite a long time ago. It was at least 30 years. So I've been doing this now 30 years. Um, and it happened in a kind of a crossroad situation. I believe that all of us come to somewhat of a crossroads in our journey at some point where it seems like we come to some kind of challenge that ends up causing us to look at life in a different way. And it can be in a number of things. For me, it was a divorce. For some people, it could be losing a job. It could be also a relationship that's gone bad, losing a loved one, for instance. Any of those type of things that seem to really wake us up to looking at ourselves in a different way. And so that happened to me about 30 years ago. And since then, I've been working on uh, just clearing those things out for myself that really kind of stops me from being aware, being awake in the moment, living from my heart, and so on. I believe it's a never-ending journey at that point, but it's more of a conscious journey. Um, Conscious journeys allow us not to use our mind so much, but to use our hearts as our director. So when we're unconscious, we're not sure of why we're making the choices we're making, and life just seems to go on in the same capacity that it always has. And for some people, that's okay. But to understand that the choices that you're really making are causing your journey to either go within or without. And I'm sure some of you have heard that before. You've heard the journey that possibly is without you, which means you're going outside yourself to look for answers for yourself. You're looking outside yourself, for instance, for, say, love or for a job that will supply you with an amount of abundance that can help you get by, can help you look at your dynamic family and see how you relate to your dynamic family, and then use those same emotional states to go outside yourself as well. And there's quite a few discussions we can have on that, Bill, of course, as far as looking at, for instance, ego and the mental, physical, and emotional states that a lot of us are unconscious about in our journey until one day we wake up because we might have lost everything we thought we cherished in our life. So that's a lot. I just gave you a lot in just a very short introduction. I've been doing this work with others to help them find that, to find new ways of choosing things in their life that will help them become more in the moment, to be more present, to be more conscious of those choices, to see if that brings any, say, some kind of serenity or any balance into their life that was missing before.
Well, if I can add my own if I can add my own perspective to your picture,
Well,
um,
I
that
welcome that easily.
that work we did together, especially when I was still living in Colorado, um, was intensive. Um, it opened up dimensions and things within me that I absolutely had no idea existed. I felt like I had found both a brother and a teacher in the relationship that we established there. Um, and we had a couple of experiences together. I know that were
Just a
profound,
couple?
profound. No, no, that were profoundly acute for me.
Uh-huh.
That literally took me to the edge. And I just want our viewers to know that um, in my own introduction, I talked about the fact that people use this term spirit partners
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
at times, but often they're talking about spirit guides or guardian angels or things like that.
yeah.
Um, I'm just going to call it your massive and your incredible spirit partner team that I know
Mm,
you are
okay.
attuned to and work with all the time. And if it had not been for their intervention in a couple of instances, the depth at which I was taking our experiences, the experience you invited us to go to, could have been really dangerous. I mean,
Yeah,
it was literally the edge. And um, you brought me back just like that, and sensed what was going on. So your intuitive sense is just enormously acute, I'll say, and your connections to spirit partners, higher beings. I know you've called this your group. You have various names for it, but you might say a bit more about that because I think anyone who wants to engage in and go down this path of true inner growth, etc., I think they would benefit enormously in working with you and having the benefit of the heart-based wisdom that you share.
yeah. Um, so I guess I'll go back a little ways to where that all started because it's been a growing experience, of course, from that point on, and even today, in how you might call it, like you could say, your spirit guides or those that with that intuitive ability, the feeling and the sensing that you can have, and everybody has it, the ability to feel around you and almost hear voices intuitively that are trying to help you direct yourself into a better conscious choice in any given moment, for instance, or to assist you to manifest and create in your life in ways that you never knew possible. Um, it also goes along the avenues of healing. And it's not just physical healing, but emotional healing, mental healing, healing of the spirit body as well. And so um, this started quite a few years for me ago in Chicago when I was there, and um, we used to have we used to have a lot of metaphysical bookstores. Well, not so much anymore. In fact, I think I have probably the greatest metaphysical library, part of which is behind me in the bookcase there, and I have people stop by every once in a while to borrow a book or whatever because they're just not available as much anymore. Of course, because of technology, it takes us away from actually picking up a book and reading it. But back in the day, these metaphysical bookstores were huge. You could walk into them, and the library of books that were there in some of these stores were aisles and aisles and aisles of great books from thousands of years ago that have been copied up to authors in present day who were doing their best to present their take on what some of these masters have taught over time. And as I was walking through one day, this was really early in my journey, there were books that would just literally fall off the shelf in front of me. And I never could figure out what that was all about till later on. And they were directing me already, even by having something like that kind of synchronicity drop, because eventually what I'd be doing is I'd be walking around, not maybe expecting that to happen, but it would happen, or they would direct me to a book, and I would buy it automatically without even really reading much of it because I knew that's a direction that they wanted me to go. And so the first thing that started happening in my work was to start creating for myself. And I kind of went into what's called mandalas. And they directed me to a book on mandalas to learn what they really truly were, which for the audience, it's a creative art piece is the best way I would say it. And in that creative art space piece, there is an inner and an outer part of the mandala. The inner part is the journey of your soul, of your spirit. The outward journey is what has been going on in this lifetime. And so a lot of these mandalas had various animals and the sacred geometry and colors and all kinds of things that would be created on a piece of paper, and then I would um, share that with them from a meditation we would do together. They would tell me what their higher self would tell me what would go in the mandala, and what started happening with it is there are some unique things that were happening in the mandala that I had a hard time believing because I was just new at this. I had one mentor who is now passed away asked me to draw his mandala, and when I did, um, the southern direction of the mandala was left blank because his higher self told me that I needed to ask him for a picture of himself when he was in Atlantis, believe it or not. And I thought that was just absolutely crazy. Well, sure enough, after I finished the mandala up to that point, I showed him the mandala and he asked what happened in the South. And I told him I was supposed to ask him for that. He looked at me startling because he says, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, you do? And he said, yeah, I have that picture. It was drawn for me and nobody knows about it. I'm the only one that knows about it. And that was the beginning of me trusting the voices that were coming in because there's no way I could know that. It's impossible for me to know that. I even knew what the picture was going to look like. It was a young child with blonde hair with a medallion that he had on his chest. And I hadn't seen the medallion yet because it was actually in the picture. And I ended up drawing that for him into his mandala then. But just to know that the direction I was getting had some incredibly deep information that there's no way I would know, brought kind of a new trust for me, to trust the voices that I was hearing, to trust the direction that I was heading. And ever since that point, and it wasn't necessary for that Mandela point, but ever since those days back then, it's just been a beautiful dance that I've had with so many masters and spirit guides and so on. I enjoy the presence. They've never let me down. They've always told me directions to go, and sometimes I would fight those directions and, of course, go the wrong way, as some of us do, because we'd rather follow our mind and our ego than we would our heart. Um, but it's never ever shocked me in any way as far as not trusting what they've told me, and as you know, Bill, I've shared that with everybody that's ever come to me. So I allow those individuals to talk to me, spirits to talk with me in regards to directions that others might be taking. I don't necessarily share with them where it's coming from because some people feel uncomfortable with that sort of thing. But yet, I kind of already know from the sensing, as you said, that there's a certain direction that someone's soul might be taking, and then I would support them as best I could in going in that direction if they choose to. And as a side note, and just saying what I just said, it's really important to understand in anyone's journey, and this is really important, that each unique soul has their own unique journey. There is no commonality between one person's journey and another person's journey. The only commonality is we're all on a journey, and our souls all have a specific, unique way of experiencing that journey. So, to tell somebody this is the way they should experience their journey is really doing them harm. To assist them in trying to, let's say, figure out how they're supposed to experience their journey, that's a different aspect. But to tell somebody this is what they should or shouldn't do, that is more from an ego state. That is not from the heart, because the heart would never tell you that you have to or not to do something. It would tell you to always experience what's there, and then you can choose how it serves you or not. Any one of us that might be, let's just call us a mentor or a teacher or a guide of some kind, a counselor, if they're truly in their hearts, they're not going to tell you what to do. You can ask them what they think or how they feel. That's okay. But the answer is presented to that individual in such a way that you meet them where they're at. And everybody's different in where you're going to meet them at. So there is no commonality to how these things develop or how each person is served in the journey they're in. So I just want to make that a very strong point, that if somebody that you're working with is telling you you have to do something in a certain way, I would almost tell you to run away from them, because they don't have your best in mind. They're more interested in their own way of doing things as opposed to helping you experience your way of following your journey and experiencing your journey.
Well, I think you've touched on two or three things that I'd like to ask a little bit more about. One is you made a reference to the mind and coming from the mind and the ego coming from the
Mm-hmm.
mind. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, please say a little bit more about that, because we live in a three-dimensional world where, in many ways, it's the ego's job, as I understand it, um,
Mm-hmm.
to keep us safe based
Yeah.
on based on the rules of how 3D works. All
Yeah.
right. So you're saying working from the heart transcends that
Correct.
way.
Yes.
Please say a little bit more about that. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah. There's a lot in this. There are various masters and mystical schools, and even in today's world, some psychiatrists and psychologists have kind of tapped into this as well. The understanding that when we're born, our mind is young as 7 years old. It develops what's called a program or a life strategy. Carl Jung was really good at this, as far as I believe, compared to most, because he was more of a spiritual psychiatrist, psychologist. And we develop these programs that are based upon the experiences that we have as children, um, in our family dynamics. And again, this is not to judge anybody or say anybody was wrong or what they did or that sort of thing. But as we were growing up, we experienced what was going on around us, whatever it might be. And because of those experiences, we develop a life strategy as to how we see life. And then we take that life strategy that has been built into our psyche And we then go outside of ourselves to build a life that was similar to the one that we experienced. That's to simplify it as best I can. And within that is a mind driven definition of how that might look. And so we're living from a definition, we're living from the mind. We're not necessarily living from our heart. And so as we develop further and further, we start becoming aware of the fact that our life is missing something. And again, this is the crossroads thing I was talking about a little bit ago, because we might follow what we've thought in our mind was a really good strategy in life. And in most cases, I'm not going to say all, but in most cases, that falls apart at a certain part in our journey. And we're confused and we don't understand how things didn't work out. Why didn't they work out? I did everything I was supposed to do, for instance. I followed the rules. I did the best I could with what I thought was presented to me, and it still fell apart anyway. That's a life based on definition. Ego is a wonderful, how would I say it, mind driven understanding of life, because you're right, Bill, it is created to be able to help us survive in the third dimensional world. Unfortunately, if we only follow the ego, if we only follow that one life strategy, we're not living life. Life is living us based upon the definition that I see. So we're really not experiencing life. We're only experiencing life from that one prospect, that one idea of what life is supposed to look like. That's not allowing yourself to fully be with life. So, what I have found and how I assist other people is very simple. I just say to them, are you living life, or is life living you? Is life telling you how you're supposed to present yourself to it? Or are you presenting the way you wish to be in any given moment to life? The only way that second, the latter one, can happen is through the heart. Because if you go through the mind, it's going to convince you to go back to the old way of doing things.
Well,
And it's survived.
oh, excuse me. The social
Well, it's helped you. Uh-huh.
conventions, the religions, the way we
Yeah.
are brought up, okay? I mean, there are all these imperatives about you're supposed to do life this way, or you're supposed to believe these things, or these are this is the way it works, and the norms and the rules and the laws and the regulations and the taboos, all of these things are surrounded by this this conventional, culturally embedded way we're supposed to behave and be.
And when you don't behave the way society tells you you're supposed to behave, how do you feel? Most of us feel unworthy.
Well, threatened, okay,
Well, yeah, and in,
or
in
yeah,
fear,
yes, in some form of fear. Yes,
in some
absolutely.
form of fear. And the basis of a lot of these strategies is based upon unworthiness, that if I don't follow what I have experienced in my childhood, then I am not going to be worthy. I'm looking for love. I'm looking for the acceptance in society according to the experiences that I had. Because everybody has different experiences or childhood. We might be able to couple those into some common traits and some common strategies, but each of them has a sense of unworthiness to them. And so we look outside of ourselves to find acceptance. And we do the best we can to be what is there. And we seem to follow religions, government, society, friendships, how we're supposed to love, how we're not supposed to love, all these definitions of what is supposed to be outside of us. And I would suggest to most people, they're probably not really happy in their life, and to the most part. There's an inner sense of depression because they still haven't let themselves feel the completeness of being in a state of balance and happiness that has been fleeting.
I think
And
I think
so,
I think
go
it
ahead.
I think it's a sense of incompleteness. that
Yeah,
no matter how much of the 3D things we may acquire,
yeah.
okay, whether it's wealth or other benefits or prestige or whatever it is, at the bottom of that well, it feels still incomplete. It's what's like, is this all? Is this all there is?
There's an emptiness. The best way I would say it is
Right.
almost
Yeah.
an emptiness down there. And we don't know what to fill it in with because we followed all the rules and regulations and definitions. And, I've loved the way I was supposed to love, and I still am not complete. I still feel I'm missing something. There is this emptiness that we're continually searching for outside of ourselves. And as long as we keep doing that, the ego is very happy. The program strategy is very happy because you're going to keep looking for the same thing over and over again and continue to keep missing the mark because it's only going after one aspect of what it is that we believe outside of ourselves we're going to find in some sense of acceptance. And it's never going to happen. At least this is what I have found in my own journey and what I try and assist others to find as well. The heart does not care about how it's supposed to look, which means in the searching of our ego, there seems to be an attachment to some kind of outcome. It has to look a certain way. When we live from our heart, all we're looking for is the experience of what's going on, the deep sense of it, and then we choose whether we will hold on to that situation, for instance, or that relationship um, that we have. Does it serve us in some capacity, continue to find our happiness, our balance, our acceptance, or not? And it's not a judgment. It's just truly an experiential situation. And this is very difficult for most people because most people are scared and fearful about letting themselves go and opening themselves up to something they don't know about. If they stay in definition, they at least know the outcome, they think,
They stay
and that keeps them
within,
safe.
yeah, they stay within the mental frame of reference that they have
Right.
that is familiar and known and trusted, even though it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Even though it doesn't work, even though they're still going to be empty, even though, but they say, well, I'm not going to go outside the box because if I go outside the box, I don't know what I'm going to have. And so that makes it very difficult for anyone to finally say to themselves, it's time for me to grow. It's time for me to look at other choices I can make. I don't know what those choices would be, but it's time for me to start making some. And so, in most cases, for me personally, this is when they show up at my door. They show up in my door only because they're looking for a new way of being in the world. Um, I say that. They would say, I don't know what to do, but I've heard you do things differently, is what they would say most of the time. And as you know from the work we've done, it's pretty true.
Well, I'll say from the work we've done that you had pretty much nailed my pattern, if I can call it that, from the beginning.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And although I clearly had stepped away, and I think this may be instructive to our listeners, but even though I had stepped away from that absolutely consuming my life, okay,
Mm. Yeah.
the underlying roots of it, okay, had not been, we could call it healed or released
Hmm.
yet, okay, and consequently, it was almost as if no matter how much deep inner work I was doing to grow and expand my heart self, okay,
Hmm.
there was always that something. There was always
Hmm.
that something pulling me back into that pattern.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have explained in my own presentation, my introduction, that I was holding on to a belief. Um, this is long before I met you. Holding on to a belief I literally had inherited. Okay,
Yeah,
from a
absolutely.
past
Yeah.
life. Okay, from a
Yeah.
past life, the soul literally was hooked on this thing you are never done working.
Yeah.
Well, we could just turn that into you're never done achieving.
Yeah.
You're never done getting better at things that you should get better at. Okay,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And boy, it has taken a lot
Yeah.
to
And
that.
part of that, I would suggest anyway, and this is again, I'm to send this out to the audience is to understand that you're constantly trying to prove your acceptance outside of you. So, like you said, you're never done achieving. You're never done trying to prove to others that you should get an attaboy, or that you should get a hug, or that you should be looked at, or you should be, yeah, any type of acceptance outside of you is what you're looking for. And it's an underlying sneaky little ego that's trying to keep you at bay. It'll let you experience some things spiritually here and there. But when it comes down to it, we even call it a spiritual ego. You know, you can get wrapped up in spirituality if you want to use that as a modality, and all of a sudden think that you've got it all figured out. And of course, most masters say that's not spirituality, that's an ego spirituality. Once you allow yourself to be open to all new opportunities without judgment, now you're on your journey. So that's allowing things to come to you as they do. The Essenes had a wonderful line. The Essenes were an ancient group of individuals back over 2,000, probably 5,000 years ago, actually. Um, and they believed, the masters and the teachers there believed that anything that showed up in front of them was there to help them master themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, doesn't matter what it is. So, as a society, what we've learned is that anything that shows up in front of us is there for us to judge.
Yep. Good, better,
Does it
best.
Yeah, does it fit into the box that I grew up in? Does it fit into the ideas that I have in my mind? Does it fit into the understandings that my group in society wants to believe in? Does it fit into my religion? Does it fit in? All these things are boxes that we've put ourselves into instead of experiencing the truth of what's being presented in front of us, because we block that truth with the judgment that we project as soon as we see it in front of us. I'm not saying that everything in front of us is beautiful. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if I judge it as bad or good, then I'm stuck in my ego instead of experiencing the feeling and the sensations of the vibrations that are coming to me to understand whether it's going to serve me or not.
May
And
I
so
may
that's
I may I jump on that sentence right there?
sure.
Feeling it,
Yes,
sense
sensing it, feel
sensing it. Okay,
correct.
quieting, if I may say, quieting the mind, or
Yeah,
and quieting the frenetic emotions
yep,
long enough for a deeper feeling to be
of the heart.
experienced and to sort of penetrate the walls of resistance that are there, or the static, all the static
Right,
that's in the environment, the inner
right.
environment.
There's and you bringing even that up is another whole discussion we can have on energy, which it's really not energy, it's waves and frequencies and vibrations and so on and colors. um, is to understand that my heart can sense, and I'm not talking about my heart, I'm talking about us
The
as a
heart,
humanity,
yes.
can sense the vibrations that are around me. I can allow then those vibrations to come into me or not. That's a choice I make. It's not judging them. I can feel if they're dense and heavy. I can feel if they're light and airy. I can feel if, like you say, there's some kind of static value to them. Does it feel like a color? Does it feel like a vibration I've had before? Any number of things. The mind cannot do that. The mind cannot do that. It cannot feel. The mind can only define. Once I understand the difference between my mind and my heart, that's the other question I pose to most people. In the situation you just walked through, were you in your mind or were you in your heart? And most people are like, oh my gosh, I don't even know,
Mhm.
because they've never spent enough time in their heart to understand that I don't even know what my heart feels like. I don't even know what that sensation might be. So there's the work, is to finally recognize, if I'm in my mind, I'm defining what's happening in front of me. I'm not sensing or feeling it. If I'm in my heart, then I'm using all of myself, my neurological patterns, my my sensing in my body, my energetic body all around me. I'm using everything when I'm in my heart to get a sense, a feeling, a vibration of what's happening in front of me instantaneously. This isn't like, okay, let's take 5 minutes and figure out what's going on. You know it. That's where your intuition comes in. It comes in right in that moment. But the mind then starts to associate itself with what's going on and starts coming up with the explanations and the definitions of what is and what isn't, what's good, what's bad, and so on and so forth. That's a lot right there, that I just threw out here too. And we could do a whole segment just on that alone, to help people understand that they have the tools within them to be able to be present in the moment and sense these things so they can make a better conscious choice.
In my introduction of myself,
Mm-hmm.
I explained how a huge revelation came to me using the tool that many psychologists use called kinesiology, which
Yeah.
is which is energy testing, which is muscle testing of the energy within you to any given thing. Well, you and I have both worked with this remarkable person, Dr. Liana Matulich,
Mm-hmm.
and I have often with her um, talked about using muscle testing, which you can do by yourself in a variety of ways. I just do it kind of through the strength of finger loop, etc. And she says, but the real test will be when you know the answer before you ever do it.
Correct.
Where
Correct.
you listen, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for just that second before you
Yes.
ever go through the motions. And the more I practiced that, the more I realized, oh my goodness, it's true. I'm going to know if I'm going to get a yes or a no before
Before it happened.
I even ask.
Yeah.
But I just got to come to that point of stillness to be able to do.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a great point. Because most people will say, they want some kind of 10-step program how they can do that. um, and and that's just the mind trying to define, this is, you do this, you do that, and all of a sudden you'll get this kind of thing. Every again it, We talked about this in the beginning of the segment, is that everybody has a unique way of perceiving and feeling and sensing in any particular moment what is right for them, and nobody else has a right to tell them that's wrong. You have a unique ability. You have, I can get in some really heavy spirituality stuff. Your anachronic cord from your heart goes to the universe. You have a energetic connection through your heart that most people don't understand. If you go to Heart Math, here's a heads up to Heart Math. If you go to their website, they've been doing work now for 25, I think 30 years, uh, trying to show people that their heart is their director. Um, And
The
they have
Heart
some
Math,
wonderful,
the Heart
yeah,
Math Institute in
yes,
California. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, yeah.
they have
They're
been
incredible.
doing a marvelous amount of work.
Yeah, yeah. I've brought them into some of my workshops just to let people know that there's a place that they can go if they have any questions as to how they might be able to attempt to do this as well. Because, we have many people on this planet that are doing this work, and the more we can all come together to assist whoever needs help to do this is the key. um, and to be able to sense something in the exact moment it's happening is the direction that our heart always goes. That intuitive ability is within minute parts of a second when we know for sure that this is not the right way to go. I can even tell you, and in my own journey, I was working in the title insurance industry downtown Chicago for a while when I was just beginning this process on my journey, and I was lost sometimes. I was going out at lunchtime, walking the streets of downtown Chicago, and they were telling me to take left turns and right turns and go here and go there, and I would follow everything they would say. It was like they were training me to listen, and it was amazing some of the places I ended up. I mean, I would end up at cathedrals and walk in and sit in the peace of the silence inside, which I didn't even know was there. I would end up in parks. I would end up meeting people I would never have met before. It's an amazing process when we allow our fears to drop and allow ourselves to listen to our eternal guide that we so beautifully have. So it takes a little work because your guide is different than my guide, and your heart is different than my heart. And the coherence that we can get from all that, and to be able to get the direction that really enhances our ability to love ourselves in ways we could never even know. And I guess here's another little point that I can throw out there. Most people think there's going to be some kind of perfection to this, so that you say to yourselves, well, this is how you're going to master yourself. And they're like, what? I can't, there's no way I can't master myself. Because of course they compare themselves to Buddha, or they compare themselves to Yeshua, or they compare themselves to some master out there and say, oh my God, you're saying I could be them? I'm like, yeah, you could. That's impossible. No, that's who you are. You have the ability to master yourself, but you'd be doing it uniquely for you. You're not going to be out there with a robe and a staff and walking the streets and telling everybody they better listen to me, because if they don't, they're going to be damned to hell. You have your own direction in your own life that you can bring beauty to. And once you start believing and trusting in your own heart, that beauty will start to be projected out. It won't even just be within yourself. You're going to start becoming that projection, and people will see you differently. They will feel you differently. They'll even ask if you've done something different in your life, because you're not the same person you were when I first met you. They will see and feel the difference. It could scare them because they're used to the person that used to do all the work for them all the time. And now you're not doing that anymore, because you're doing it out of your heart. And you realize that you've been enabling them to do all these things against you the whole time, and you're just not going to do it anymore. And you're doing it not out of judgment, you're doing it out of love, because you've allowed them to act in their program. And so that's a whole different way of perceiving your journey and the relationships that you have. There's so much to all of this. It's really amazing. But in the end, it's not about perfection. It's about loving yourself more than you don't. It's about getting to that 51%. Archangel Michael, and some of the books that have been channeled, some of the YouTubes you could watch every once in a while, you'll hear this quite a bit. And the point is that if I can get past my ego, my mind, just even 1%, I'm on my way, because I'm not going back. I'm always going to be as present as I can. I'll always look for other choices as best I can. Can you do it all the time? Bill, you can't do it down here all the time. It's impossible. You can't be 100%. It's not going to happen. But you know what? If you do it more than you don't, you've had a pretty good day.
Well,
And that's
let's
the key.
let's conclude this introduction to this
It's
this
still a bit
this
more than an introduction at this point.
no,
Huh?
this remarkable dialogue at that point by emphasizing that point. Okay, nobody's perfect. You're never going to be perfect. You're not going to, although the spirit and the energy and the essence of what we call God is inside of you, you're not going to do all the stuff God has done. All right.
No.
But you have, but you've got to take that first step. And if you're courageous enough, because that is
Yep.
required, okay,
Yeah.
take that first step of be stepping out of, okay, the safety zone. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll call it the comfort zone. But stepping out of that and realizing, but see, my motto is no one will die. Okay.
Hmm.
If you do something different, if you if
Yeah.
if you stretch beyond those imaginary boundaries,
Yeah.
okay. See, because all of that belief stuff is imaginary. If you stretch beyond that and you don't die, you know you can take another step, and pretty soon you know you can really start moving. So,
It's an interesting point that you make about that, about you're still, you haven't died. Um, in a lot of the sessions that I have, of course, sometimes they're putting band-aids on things, situations people are going through and they don't know how to get through them and they're pretty disastrous and so on and so forth. And they'll come down and sit in front of me and they'll give me the story. There's always a story, which is fine. And by the time they're done with the story and they're sitting there and it's like they finally finish. And so there's this like, oh, this, okay, I got it all out of me kind of a thing, right? And and so then it's time for me to speak. And I just look at them and smile and I say, well, that was really tough what you walked through. That's really hard what you walked through, but you're still here, aren't you? Are
mhm.
you okay? Yeah. Okay, well, let's start from here then. It's interesting because our mind and our ego wants to make all these disasters more than what they really are. I'm not trying to take away some incredibly emotional situations people go through from, say, the fires out in California. Oh my gosh, it's horrible what they're going through. I can't even imagine. And so it's not to take anything away from that, but what's interesting if you, as they interview some of these people, is they all look and say, yeah, I've lost everything, but we're still together.
Mhm.
We're still okay. It's like we can rebuild, we can find our way past this, but we're still together and we'll find our way. So there's this inner strength, this inner courage to face the disasters head on in some ways. Nobody would ever want to go through these disasters, but they're challenges that happen to us and we don't see them coming. And it's like you say, are you still alive? Did you die? No. Some people did. And they have to face those emotional situations that have happened and they can't understand why they did happen. So there's that confusion and mistrust of certain things and government and people and why didn't they tell me this and why didn't they tell me that and all this kind of stuff. But then you break that all down again, you take that deep breath and say, okay, you're still here. So there's something that you're here for. We don't know what that might be, but you're obviously still here. So where do we begin? And that's kind of the way I do the best I can to be with people during those kind of situations. I'm not belittling what's going on in any way, but there is some sense of saying to oneself that as hard as all this has been, and you know my story, Bill, I've been through quite a
Yes.
bit in the past, um, and even to the point of suicide, where something inside stops us and says, there's more for you to do. That's the heart.
Mhm.
That's the heart, because there's a sense to that. There's a feeling to that. And then in those moments, we have a choice of whether to go back into the ego, into the mind, or whether we look at a new way, a new path. And as we continue doing these interviews and things for spirit partners, I hope what we're going to do for anyone out there, I don't care who it is, I don't care what you follow, I don't care. I don't look at anybody as anything else but a human being. I don't see them any other way. I don't care what you've done in the past. I don't care how the mistakes you've made. Those are all in the past. How can we change this for you? How can we help you find your way through all these things and help you to be a better human being on this planet? I hope we do that for as many as we possibly can as we go forward with all of this. So
Well,
I just want to throw that out there.
I thank you for bringing all of this to our listeners. And all I can say is my gratitude for the years we've had together.
Yeah, me too.
Um, yeah,
Absolutely.
it
Absolutely.
was it was easier and more fun when we were physically, up the road
Yeah.
from each other, uh,
Yeah.
than than 1,000 miles away. But
Yeah.
see, the connection, the depth of it is absolutely there, and
Yeah.
we can pick that up in an instant
Yeah. And
because
instant consciousness is free.
we have shared so much together, and it has been so authentic. It has been so revelational.
Yeah.
Um, and well, perhaps we can inspire some people to start on a path that they're not quite on yet. Um,
Hmm.
I certainly think you've given us much to go on, and I look forward to a very next and soon interview with you, Tom Domain. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I look forward to it as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you
All
again,
right.
folks, soon.
See ya. Bye bye.